time plus space equals the potential for motion. Without time, there's no when. And without space, there's no where to move. Today, we're going to take a closer look at spacing because learning more about spacing is what drastically improved my animation skills within a short period of time. So in this video, we're going to take a look at the 4 basic types of motion that you can use to animate anything you can possibly think of.
Make some merchandise your audience can purchase by signing up for Printful. You can POD your marketplace. So much to customize. Focus on your designs. Go with your fluid intuition. Knowing you the one that owns it. You can do it over and over and over. And when you make it big, don't forget the one I told you. Printful. Check the description. You can find the link to the future of your t-shirt business.
What's up guys, it's Sebastian here from the Noble Frugal Studio. There are 4 fundamental types of movement or spacings that you can use to animate any motion you can think of. The first one is constant motion, which means an object moves at a consistent speed. The second one is ease in, the object starts slow and speeds up. The third one is ease out, which means the object comes in fast and slows down. And the fourth one is ease in, ease out, where the object starts slow, speeds up, and then slows down again. Learning how to animate these types of motion is the key to achieve smooth and natural animation in your portfolio. So grab your stylus and follow along as I demonstrate how to animate each one. And yes, you do have to actually follow along. Let's go. As always, we're going to approach animating each one of these types of motion by drawing the keyframes, the extremes, and then the breakdowns. Today I'm using a free 2D animation program called Opentoonz to demonstrate all the animation in this video. My FPS is set to 24 frames per second, and we're going to be animating on 2s, which means one drawing every other frame. So follow along and I'll take you through each of these step by step. So we'll start with constant motion. So on our first frame, let's draw our A keyframe. I'm gonna do this with cubes because they're just kind of easy to draw. Then we're going to go to frame 17, and then I'm going to draw in our B keyframe. So label this A, circle it because it's a keyframe, label this B. Alright, so we have our 2 keyframes. Now we're going to go in the middle, which is frame 9, and we're going to draw the breakdown or the midpoint. So let's turn on onion skin. Draw on frame 9. I'm just going to reference frame number 3. We'll draw right in the middle. This is the breakdown, so we underline it twice. Okay, now that we have our keys, extremes, and breakdowns, our core drawings, we can make our timing chart. So I'm going to go to frame A. We're going to go from A all the way down to B. We have C in the middle. So this is what a constant motion timing chart is going to look like. So we know C is on frame 9, A is on 1, and B is on 17. So we're going to have an in-between between A and C, or 1 and 9. That's going to be 5. Then we're going to have an in-between between C and B. That's going to be 13. And we're also going to have an in-between between all of these. As you notice, each of these points is evenly spaced, which is how we know this is constant motion. Let's start by drawing 5. 5 is between A and C. Let's draw 13 next. 13 is between C and B. It's always good to name your in-between, so this is 7. Now we can fill in the rest of the in-betweens, which are on 2s. This is 3. So that's actually 5, not 7. 3, 5. Now we want 7 right here. In between 5 and C. Between C and 13 is going to be 11. Then between 13 and B is going to be 15. Okay, hit play and you have constant motion. Okay, next we're going to animate an ease in. So let's do the same thing. Draw our keys, extremes, and breakdown, and then write the timing chart. Okay, so we have A and B, but the special thing about the ease in is that our breakdown frame is not in the middle. Our ease in actually will reach the breakdown frame right before it reaches B. So let's go ahead and draw in the breakdown right before it reaches B. We can represent this on our chart, A to B. And we're going to put C in the middle because that's our breakdown. We're putting it in the middle because it's still spaced in the middle despite being timed differently. So this time C is on frame 15. So in ease in, the object starts slow and then it speeds up. So the fastest motion is going to occur between C and B. In order to make an object go slower, we're going to take half the space towards A and C. That's going to be 13, then half again, 11, half again, 9, all the way towards A. So there's more visual information towards A and less between C and B. That's going to make our object appear like it's going faster. So I'm just going to indicate that we're going to do this all the way until we run out of frames. Okay, so go to frame 15, which is our breakdown. We're going to take a step back to frame 13. Make sure we have that on our onion skin. For 13, draw between 15 and A for 13. Go back one, draw between 13 and A for 11. Go back between 11 and A, frame 9, between 9 and A for frame 7, between 7 and A for frame 5, then between 5 and A for frame 3. Okay, you can hit play and your ease in is done. Next up is the ease out. So we're gonna do the same thing by drawing on our keyframes first. An ease out is the opposite of an ease in. So that means we're going to reach the breakdown frame on the second drawing instead of the second to last drawing. So that's going to fall on frame 3 for us. Reference B, and let's draw the breakdown in the middle between A and B, but on the second drawing. Let me see. Let's draw a timing chart. So we have A down to B. C is still spaced in the middle, but it falls on frame 3. So this ease out chart is just the opposite of the ease in chart. So we're going to take half the space towards C and B. That's going to be frame 5. Half again towards B, 7. Half again, 9. Half again, 11, and so on. So let's go to frame 3. Take half of the space between C and B. This is frame 5. It's good to distinguish the difference between drawings and frames. So right now we're on frame 5, but we're on drawing number 3. So let's go to frame 7. Draw in between frame 5 and B, calling on frame 7. We're naming the in-between based on what frame it lands on. Opentoonz is numbering these in-betweens based on which drawing in the sequence they are. Now we're on frame 9. Let's go in between 7 and B. 11, let's go in between 9 and B. 13, go in between 11 and B. And finally 15, go in between 13 and B. Right, so hit loop. Now our object comes in fast and slows down. Okay, and finally we're going to animate an ease in, ease out. So let's draw our 2 keyframes as usual. A and B. And then just like constant motion, our ease in, ease out also has a breakdown that falls in the middle of the timing. So let's go to 9, which is right in the middle of that timing, and draw in our breakdown frame. All right, let's go to frame 1 and write our timing chart. A to B, we have C in the middle, which falls on frame 9. So basically we're just gonna perform an ease in and an ease out all in one chart. We'll use the first half for the ease in portion. So let's take half of the space. This is going to be frame 7, half again, 5, half again, 3. Then on the other side, we're going to take half of the space towards B. This will be frame 11, half again, 13, half again, 15. You don't necessarily have to take half. You can even take a third, which if you want to speed up something in an exponential manner, I recommend you use thirds. But for simplicity, we're using even spacing or half spacing today. So use the breakdown and let's get started. So we'll start on frame 7 for our ease in portion. Let's draw in between A and C. Go back to frame 5. Draw in between 7 and A. Frame 5. Then go to frame 3 and draw in between 5 and A. Frame 3. Okay, let's go on the other side. So we're going to go to frame 11. Let's draw in between C and B. That's frame 11. Then in between 11 and B. Frame 13. Then in between 13 and B will be frame 15. Okay, let's hit play. Now our box starts slow, speeds up in the middle, and slows down. All right, now that you know how to animate each of these types of motion, how do you apply this knowledge in a real-world animation? So after you've drawn your keys, extremes, and breakdowns, you can decide which type of motion would look best between each point. And then we record this information on our timing chart. For example, between A and the A extreme, I think an ease in, ease out would look best. Our character is coming from a rest position into an anticipation. So I want her to speed up and then slow down before she jumps. Then when she does jump, I want this whole thing to be an ease out. So we can have a nice airtime effect when it gets up to this keyframe. So I'm going to record that on my timing chart. So we have A to the A extreme. And I only have 1-2 frames to do this on. So I will just favor each frame. So a simplified ease in, ease out, I'm going to by using favors. So now we have from the A extreme to B, and we have AB, our breakdown in the middle. I want this to be an ease out, so my frames are going to fall in the AB to B portion. But I don't want them to be even spacing because I want the drawings to adopt the look of this drawing. So I'm going to go ahead and have these two in-betweens favor B. Let's get animating. Okay, so this is what I ended up with. Let's take a look. So originally I animated up to this B keyframe. I just did an ease into the ground. Then the same ease in, ease out, back up. So let's break this down to see what we can learn about the different types of motion. So first we have the character anticipating a jump. almost like a spring compressing before it jumps up in the air. So that's gonna be our using ease in, ease out in order to achieve that. Did that via favors like so. Our character's going down, and then they spring up all the way to that B keyframe. So from here they spring up. There's no in-betweens between the crouch and the middle position. We only have two in-betweens up here. So we have an ease out going up. We had a breakdown right here, and then our two in-betweens. And then I decided to add some more frames coming back down to give more airtime to this animation. So we have her coming back down and landing. So that's 1, 2, 3. And this is the breakdown, which is a smear frame. 1, 2, 3. That's going back downwards. That's an ease in. And then we end the entire animation the same way it started, with another ease in, ease out. So ease in, ease out to crouch, and then we got an ease out and ease in and an ease in, ease out. So you find that you'll be using ease in and outs quite a lot, especially if you're a character animator. Now I think it's worth mentioning that you may hear these types of motion referred to as linear motion, slow out, or slow in, but the point is that you want to identify whether an object is constant, speeding up, slowing down, or both. And now you know how to animate all four. So there you have it, guys. All you have to do in order to animate anything is to identify which type of motion the object you're referencing is employing. This works universally whether you're animating pose to pose or straight ahead. So I highly recommend that you practice animating all four of these types on a regular basis. So once again, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave me a like. That would help me out a lot. I had a blast making this video. Timing and spacing is the most important principle of animation. In fact, I'd say that out of all the 12 principles of animation, this is the only one that is truly fundamental to the art of telling stories with motion. Once I became fully aware of how to manipulate time and space in my animations, so many things that I thought were difficult to animate, I realized were actually very simple. So let's jump right in and break down the details of timing and spacing. Be sure to leave me a like and let's get started. So why is timing and spacing fundamental to animation? Well, because without time and without space, you can't move. We need those two ingredients in order to make motion possible. So in terms of 2D animation, timing refers to when a drawing occurs in a sequence, and spacing refers to where a drawing occurs in a sequence. The standard frame rate for film and animation is 24 frames per second, so we'll use that in this video. That means we can show the audience or the viewer a maximum of 24 pictures or drawings every second. So since there are 24 frames per every second, we know that we'll see frame 1 before we see frame 24, because these frames are numbered with respect to time. The spacing in an animation is where on the canvas your drawing appears, whether it's on the right or on the left, up in the corner, etc. For example, say we have an object spaced to the left on frame 1, but then spaced to the right on frame 24. Frames 1 and 24 are the timing. Left and right is the spacing. And when we hit play, what results is an object that looks like it's moving from the left to the right. So as animators, we use a combination of timing and spacing to describe when an object moves, where it moves, and especially how it moves. This is why timing and spacing is so principal to animation. Okay, now that we know how timing and spacing work together, we can delve a little deeper. Let's start with timing. Remember, timing is when your drawings occur. Basically, what frames do your images appear on? First of all, to understand timing, we need to distinguish the difference between frames and drawings. There's two things we have to focus on: FPS and DPS. FPS is your frames per second, meaning the number of images that your viewer is seeing every single second. And DPS is your drawings per second, how many drawings you actually make per every second. So if we make one drawing per every frame, which is animating on ones, our FPS equals 24 and our DPS equals 24. So if we make one drawing every other frame, or animating on twos, our FPS is still 24, but our DPS is 12. We're still at 24 FPS, we just made half of the drawings. You can animate on 1s, 2s, or 17ths if you like, and you can still be at the same 24 FPS. The FPS, the frames per second, sets the maximum DPS, the drawings per second. So just look at the FPS as the maximum amount of pictures per second. You don't always have to animate on 1s. So before we move on, why animate on different timings? 1s, 2s, 3s, 14ths. Here are some tips. 1s are best when it comes to animating fast actions. For example, if you only have 5 frames to animate a run cycle, it may look strange if you tried to animate it on 2s. You're only drawing on 1, 3, and 5. That's only 3 poses. If you animate on 1s, you have a total of 5 poses or 5 drawings you can make. So that'll let you get in all your necessary run poses so your animation looks natural. Beyond animating fast actions, 2s cut your maximum workload in half while still providing a very smooth animation experience. I usually animate on 2s because of this. Animating on 3s is economic. Again, you can still achieve smooth animation on 3s as long as you space your drawings wisely. We'll cover that later on. The point I'm trying to make is this: higher drawings per second does not automatically mean smoother, better looking animation. In order to achieve smooth, appealing animation, we also need to get familiar with some basic spacing principles. We know that timing is when an object moves. Now spacing is where your object moves on the canvas. Objects that move in space obey the laws of motion physics, called mechanics. Now this video isn't about mechanics, so without getting too deep, there are 2 basic ways an object can move in the universe: via constant motion or acceleration. Constant motion, or uniform motion, means that an object moves at a consistent rate. When you're animating this, the distance between each frame is the same. Now acceleration, or easing motion, means an object is speeding up, slowing down, or turning. So when you're animating this, that means the distance between each frame is increasing or decreasing. For simplicity though, I like to break down movement into 4 types. This helps simplify the animation process for me. Using these individually and in combination with one another will allow you to animate any motion you can possibly think of. If you'd like to learn how, click the video linked above in the card. So those are some of the basic ways that objects can move, but there's a lot more to learn about spacing. For example, in a typical animation workflow, you'll start by drawing your keys, extremes, and breakdowns. Then, using your types of motion knowledge, you'll figure out which type of motion would go best between each point. Say you have an ease in, ease out from A to B using the breakdown C as a midpoint. You're animating on 2s and you have 17 frames total. Point A is on frame 1, point B is on frame 17, and point C is on frame 9. So let's start with the ease in portion. We draw frame 7 between A and C, frame 5 between A and 7, and 3 between A and 5. And now you have an ease in. So we just go and do the opposite for the ease out portion, and voila, we have an ease in, ease out. But hey, did you notice something? Every time we drew our in-betweens, we measured half of the space between one point and another, but we could divide up this space in other ways too. Here are 3 common ways to divide up space between drawings. The first way is halves, which is what we just did, taking half of the space between each point. Halves are great for when you have a ton of frames to fill because your brain's pretty good at measuring an equal amount of space on either side. At least my brain is. The second way is thirds. Taking a third of the space is great for increasing momentum quickly or decreasing momentum quickly. Thirds have a snappiness to them. And finally, the third common way is by favors. Now, favors are by far the snappiest. Instead of providing a specific measurement, such as a half or a third, you just make the drawing favor another drawing, meaning it's just moving a little bit towards its destination. Favors are the best when it comes to increasing momentum quickly and decreasing momentum quickly. So if you're in a pinch and you only got 4 frames to make an ease in, ease out, just favor both keyframes and there you go. That sounds great, but how do you put this timing and spacing knowledge to use? Well, after you draw your keys, extremes, and breakdowns, you can identify what you want to happen in between these core drawings. So I'm using Clip Studio to animate today. First, we have to decide how much time we want our action to take. So if you don't already have a time slot for your animation, try acting out the motion in real life and then time yourself while doing it. So I have a stopwatch here. And as I click this stopwatch, I'm just gonna imitate the action I'm animating to see how much time it will take. Okay, so I got just under 1 second. And now you can take the amount of seconds that you end up with and multiply it by your FPS in order to find out how many frames your motion will take to complete. So in our case, we have 24 FPS. I got just under a second, so that means I could choose my timing just to be 24 frames total. But since I got just under, I think 17, which is what mine is set to right now, will work just fine. So next in the timing phase, we have to space out our frames on the timeline according to how we want the motion to appear within the time slot we came up with. It happens slowly, that looks good. But when he slams this hammer down, I want this to be relatively quick. So let's move this frame, like that maybe. I'll turn off the colors for now. Just focus on the line work. So I plan to animate this on 2s. So we have 1 frame to draw in between 1 and 1A. And then between 1A and 2, we actually have 2 frames to draw. So I want this wind up to be a little slower. Maybe just one in between this extreme and this keyframe. So I think that timing looks really good. I'm gonna go with this. Okay, now that we've come up with a time slot for our animation and we spaced out our frames according to the way we want the motion to occur, we can now plan our in-betweens using a timing chart. A timing chart basically describes the transitions from each chord drawing to the next. For example, is the transition from A to A extreme an ease in? Is it an ease out, or is it both? Is it constant motion? Are there no in-betweens at all? Now is the time to decide all of that. It really should be called a timing and spacing chart, since we're charting the spatial relationships between each point. So from A to the A extreme, I think I'm gonna do a simple ease out, because we only have 1 frame to fill in, and that is frame number 3, since we're animating on 2s. Now from the A extreme to B, the B extreme, we have 2 frames to fill. I want this hammer slam to be very impactful, so I'm gonna put a couple of favors toward A, which is an ease in, or an ease out, depending how you look at it. Really, it's starting slow is what I'm saying. Okay, and then from the B extreme to B, I'm going to make, let's draw this. I'll draw it this way since I wanna interrupt that drawing. B extreme to B, our in-between will favor B, so we can put all this motion to rest. One last thing before we get animating is we can name our in-betweens. And the way we name in-betweens is according to what frame number they land on. So this in-between lands on frame 3, so we'll call it 3. This in-between, which is a favor, is gonna be on frame 7, and then we have one on frame 9. 7 will come first before 9, and then 9. And then lastly, we have an in-between on frame 13. All right, now that we have our chart written down, let's start animating. So guys, if you ever worked really hard on an animation, but it just didn't turn out right, I'll bet you that the issue has to do with timing and spacing, which really isn't that surprising when you think about it. After all, motion itself is just a change in location or orientation of a body with time. Without space and time, we can't move. So it makes sense that when you're trying to make characters come to life through motion pictures, that a hearty knowledge of timing and spacing is essential. Characters are the most captivating aspect of any animation. There's just something about them that really pulls the audience into the experience and makes them interested in the world they're seeing. The good news is that animating your own characters can be just as fun as watching others. Hey guys, it's Sebastian here from the Noble Frugal Studio, and today I'm going to introduce you to the basics of character animation. Be sure to leave me a like and let's get started. So what is a character? Basically, a character is a depiction of a person. You can think of animated characters just like puppets, but instead of moving them around with our hands, we draw them on the canvas. How do we make a character? Simple. All we have to do is take a shape or a form and personify it. To personify something means to add human characteristics to it. We can do this through a subject's form, movement, speech, etc. For example, you could take a non-human form like a trapezoid, give it legs, which is a human characteristic, and boom, you have a character. Characters can potentially be anything. They could be a cube, an apple, or a nebula. As long as it has a personality, it's a character. When designing for animation specifically, there are a few key objectives that determine a successful character in my mind. A great character has several human-like appendages to convey a range of emotions. For example, they'll have eyes, a mouth, hands, and feet. Also, an appealing design that is simple enough to draw over and over again. These objectives are relative, of course, because some styles may be more detailed than others, while still accomplishing a successful character design. Whatever your objective is, whether it be making simple characters to speed up the animation process, or more detailed characters that can convey a larger range of emotions, design your character with that goal in mind. With all of that out of the way, how do we tell stories by using the motion of our characters? In 2D animation, we typically break down stories or sequences into 3 types of drawings called core drawings. The first is keyframes. Keyframes are drawings that tell the essential story of an animated sequence. Next are extremes. Extremes are drawings that further break down the mechanics of emotion. These are not essential to the story. And finally, we have breakdowns. Breakdowns just describe the transition between each extreme. These 3 types of drawings tell the complete story of any given motion. After this, in-betweens are added to make the sequence easier to watch and more appealing to the eye. Why don't we go ahead and try this out in a real-world animation example? Let's go. First, we start off with the story. So for demonstration, I just wrote up a short script for us to animate today. A wagon loses control and crashes into the tree where Pi is sleeping. Pi wakes up startled. Let's draft some keyframes to tell the essential story of this script. So as you can see here, I've already warmed up my drawing. I just did some parallel lines, circles, cubes, cylinders, some perspective stuff. Of course, gesture, very important for character animators, and some composition practice, thinking about the scene we're drawing today. I have the whole practice routine organized in the video. You can find that in the card. All right, I'm gonna make a new level. Go ahead and select my sketch 1 brush. I'm gonna start off with my brush really big. That helps me establish essential shapes at first. Also, it's worth mentioning that I did a quick sketch of Pi's updated character design so I can reference this while working. It's very helpful to have a character sheet of your character with you when animating. If you guys want to see a video on that, let me know. So my goal is to only draw story relevant movements in these keyframes. Any minor details such as, say, his ears flapping or something else can all be added later on. I like to think to myself when I'm drawing keyframes, what poses are essential for the viewer to understand what's happening on screen? And then also, what poses can I do without? Right here we have Pi waking up because he's shocked. He looks forward, then he looks to the side. Nothing too story rich here, just a few movements, but with just these drawings, the viewer can tell what is happening in the scene. The key is to get your story down with as few poses as possible. It's kind of like playing charades if you think about it. Okay, now that our story is all set, we can ground the animation in the physical universe by setting its extremities. Basically, we're making the extremes. For this example, we're going to add some anticipation and overshoot, as well as some squash and stretch to make the animation look more natural. Both anticipation and squash and stretch are principles of mechanics or motion physics, so it's appropriate that we add them in the extremes phase. I like to start with my brush pretty big so I can get an idea of what I'm doing before I actually commit to any drawing. Make his head squash a little bit in this one. I want to squash like this. So I'll leave this surprised frame without an overshoot. Usually I would, really push it and make the overshoot frame where his head's really surprised like that, something like that. But I'll leave it because I'm going to treat this kind of like a standard take. And we'll go over what takes are in a separate video. We can get some nice overshoot from this head turn right here. So I'm gonna make a frame after 4. And right before, to get some anticipation for this head turn, right before he whips his head around, he's just gonna move it slightly more to the right. Kind of like a wind up. Very typical with character animation. Put his eyebrows down. Typically when we turn our heads, we close our eyes to protect them from the air passing. So his eyebrow can go down, can start to go down during that wind up. Alright, this slight look to the left will anticipate this frame right here. So right before frame number 6, let's draw in, and I'm just going to focus on the head for now because really the body's not really making any significant motions. Overshoot this next frame. So his head's going to be somewhat over here. Yeah, I like to start drawing big because it helps me focus on the shape of what I'm drawing rather than the small details early on. You know, actually we can push this somewhat forward a little bit too. Can exaggerate this eye position right here. Don't want to do it too much. We want it to sort of look snappy. That's already looking pretty good. So notice in this extreme, the head is actually leading, so shoulders are going to go with it a little bit. The shoulders are going to come with the head. His legs are going to stay put, and his forearm is actually planted on the ground right there by the hand, so his hand's going to stay put as well. So only this upper region, his shoulders, some of his torso are going to follow along, but everything else is going to stay put. Okay, these extremes look pretty good. Now, to transition from extreme to extreme, we use breakdowns. In the breakdowns is where we can introduce more minute mechanical details, such as which body part is leading which motion. We did a little bit of that in the extremes, but this is where we really get the mechanical work done. Because breakdowns describe the transition from extreme to extreme or extreme to key, you may also hear them referred to as passing positions or midpoints. They aren't always in the middle, but they are a transitional extreme designed to break down the motion further. One breakdown in particular is from here to here, I'm looking at. So let's make a new frame in the middle. He's just gonna get a little bit deeper into his seat here. You know what? I actually forgot one of the extremes. I forgot an overshoot because I want when he gets to this frame where he's sat up to wait a little bit before he turns his head. I'm gonna insert an overshoot right here. A little bit of stretch. Alright, so we have a key, extreme, key, breakdown, extreme, key, extreme, extreme, key. So we need a breakdown in between these two extremes for our typical head turn. Usually a typical head turn, you dip the head down, add a little bit of squash and stretch so the head's going to be a little bit wider. Just dip down. The middle probably. Somewhere right here. Make sure we're following that arc with the eyes. This looks about done. So last overview, keyframe, extreme, keyframe, breakdown, extreme, keyframe, extreme, breakdown, extreme, keyframe. All right, so here we have all of the core drawings of this animation finished. So now let's space them out on the timeline according to what looks natural. In Opentoonz, I'm just gonna start out by selecting all of these, right click, reframe, and put them on 4s so I can watch how the animation looks so far. Even that's not bad timing. One thing I want to change is have this last a little longer right here, frame 6. Now, essentially, the animation is complete at this point. If you have a tight budget or you're just going for a minimalistic look, you can feel free to stop here. Otherwise, now is the time to add in-between frames to make the motion easier to follow and more appealing to the eye. In-betweens are somewhat of a separate art form than core drawing. So if you want to learn more about timing charts and in-betweens, check out my video on timing and spacing. That's all from me, guys. Now you know the basics of how to approach character animation. Let's animate a simple head turn together in the free 2D animation software, Opentoonz. First, we'll start by making our core drawings, keys, extremes, and breakdowns. Next, we'll space out the drawings on the timeline, and finally, we'll plot our in-betweens with a timing chart and draw them in. Hey guys, it's Sebastian here from the Noble Frugal Studio. I thought my last video on character animation might have been a little complicated for you beginners. So let's use a simpler subject to practice each step of character animation. Be sure to leave me a like and let's get started. When you open up Opentoonz, you'll be greeted with a screen like this. Let's go ahead and set up our new scene. So we're gonna name this head turn. I'm gonna save this to my tutorials project, but you can save it in the sandbox if you want. Our width is gonna be 1920 by 1080. Units are set to pixels, and we're gonna be animating at 24 FPS. Hit create scene. I'm gonna right click on the timeline here, hit new level, Toonz raster level, width 3000, height 3000, hit OK. Awesome, now I'm just gonna click Control plus S on my keyboard to save. I'm gonna go to raster. Let's select a brush to use. Maybe try this one. Seems all right. I'm gonna go to the settings here, turn the hardness up. That looks good. Let's use this. So guys, I'm right-handed, so I'm gonna switch where these color windows are because it's not really working for me right now. I'm gonna go to Windows, Workspace, uncheck Lock Room Panes. Then I'm just gonna drag these over here. Drag this level palette, put it underneath the style editor. Should I put this underneath right there? Perfect. I'm gonna go back to Windows, Workspace, and then check Lock Room Panes again. So let's start off by making our core drawings for our head turn. The first core drawing that we always start with is the keyframe. Keyframes are drawings that tell the basic story of any given motion. For this head turn, all we really need is 2 drawings. Basically the head facing left and then the head facing right. So we're gonna start with the head facing left. We're on frame 1. I like to start by sketching lightly with a large brush. I'm gonna hit Control S on my keyboard to save frequently because Opentoonz can crash unexpectedly sometimes. All right, that's keyframe number 1, basically down. You definitely want to spend a little bit of time on these because the keyframe define what your entire animation is going to look like. Select this drawing and just move it slightly towards the middle. Let's draw keyframe number 2. Just scroll all the way down to frame, say 17. Just draw on the canvas to create another drawing. Now this is 2. I'm sorry guys, I literally switched windows, I didn't even realize it. Here we are. Back to where you guys can see it. So right click to activate onion skin, activate and deactivate it. And these are the onion skin points on the timeline. Guess I have to move these over again. Start on keyframe number 2. Okay, this will be 17. You know, it might change later. Not too worried about that. Select this and just drag this down a little bit and over so that the same distance from this X in the center. All right, so we have our keyframes done. It looks like our character's looking to the left and they see something exciting to the right. Next up, let's make our extreme drawings. Extremes are drawings that further describe the physics or mechanics of a given motion. In this demonstration, we're going to use extremes to implement some anticipation and overshoot in our animation. That just means our character is going to wind up slightly before turning their head, and then on the other side, they're going to end up going too far and resting back into this final keyframe. And I'll show you what that's like right now. For the anticipation, our character is just going to move slightly more to the left before they move to the right. We also tend to close our eyes when we turn our heads to protect our eyes from the air that's passing. So we can start that in this frame. Just to save ourselves the work, I'm going to erase this one. I'm just going to change this to an A. I'm going to change 17 to a B. Tap on 2 and drag right before 3 and click this tab and drag these together. This is the way I usually do it, so I can keep everything close by so we can space out the frames in the timing phase when we're, creating the timing chart and stuff like that. We don't really need to do that now, so I'll make it easier. This is going to be the A extreme. Anytime I have an extreme, I just put these sort of pow effect markings around it. Now we want to make an extreme of B. So I'm going to click 2, click this tab and drag outwards towards 4. Then I'm going to draw on the canvas while selected on that frame between 2 and 4. What I'm going to do is I'm going to overshoot this pose. Overshooting is basically when a character or an object goes farther than its projected target. So if our target is this smiling face position right here, we can basically overshoot this by exaggerating this position. So we're going to flip it like this. It's a little slightly farther to the, this is technically the right because we flipped the canvas. Slightly farther in that direction. We can make the mouth a little more open. Let's take off that onion skin. Extreme. Pow effects. Boom. Our character winds up and overshoots the pose before finally resting. Anticipation and overshoot can add a lot of life to your animation. Finally, let's finish off our core drawings by drawing in the breakdowns. Breakdowns are used to describe the transition from extreme to extreme or from extreme to key. I'll make the breakdown position to demonstrate it. Let's draw in the middle of here. For example, when our character turns their head, does their head dip down like this? Or does it go up like that? Or does the head stay straight as it turns? All of these questions can be answered with breakdown drawings. Since we're animating a typical head turn, we're going to dip the head downwards. Just, not too much, but slightly. Put a little bit of squash on it. Squash and stretch. Just put a tad bit of squash on it. I want to make sure the head's big enough though, so we maintain that volume. You can notice it's being slightly deformed. Okay, that'll do for now. Let's call this breakdown A, B, and we underline it because it's a breakdown. Okay, that wraps up the core drawings for this animation. Let's space these drawings out. All right, so what I did is I just clicked and dragged to select all these drawings. Right click, reframe, reframe on 4s. That timing looks pretty good already. I guess it's because our final frame is landing on 17 like we originally had it. So that was the first step of the timing phase. Now we're going to move on to making our timing chart. So for our timing chart, we want to be mindful that we're going to be animating on 2s, meaning each of these drawings is going to be exposed for 2 frames, or it'll last 2 frames. If you don't know about ease in and out or the different types of motion, click the video in the card. So we have A, keyframe down to the A, extreme pow effects. I'm going to make that an ease in. I'm going to favor A. So this is going to be frame number 3. Actually, instead of writing A keyframe and A extreme, we actually can put the frame numbers at this point. Forgot about that. So this is going to be 1. 1 is a keyframe, and down to 5. 5 is an extreme. We're going to ease into it. Traditional animators will actually call this an ease out. It can really be both depending on which frame you're referencing. But just, traditional animators will call something that will speed up and ease out. All that really matters is that our character is going to accelerate towards 5. Then we have from 5 down to A, B, and B in one chart. So down to, what's B land on? 13. 13. Not really a smart place to put my timing chart. Let's move this stuff over here. From 5 to 13. 13 is an extreme. Put those pow effects around it. AB in the middle, which lands on frame 9. And since it's a breakdown, we underline it. Kind of want this to look like a very snappy animation, so I'm going to have frame 7 and 11 favor the extremes. So 7's going to favor 5, and 11's going to favor 13. And finally, from the B extreme to the B keyframe, down to 17, which is a keyframe. We'll just have it favor 17 so we can wrap up all the motion that was built up during this animation. All right, let's draw in these in-betweens. I'm going to set my onion skin nodes or points so they can fall on the frame I'm trying to draw. All right, so we want to favor the first keyframe in this one. So the red is what's behind and the green is what we're looking forward to. So we're just going to draw more towards the red. Let's draw 7, that's favoring 5. Even though 11 is favoring 13, I still want the eyes to be closed. And lastly, we have 15 favoring 17. So I forgot to write that frame number into our chart. 15. On frame 11, I'm going to drag the lip a little bit. And we just finished all of those in-betweens. Nice. All right, congratulations, guys. You just finished animating a head turn like a pro. Both timing and spacing are used to determine an object's speed. Whether you want to animate fast or slow motion, you'll have to control your timing and spacing to achieve the right feel for your animation. This video is for those of you who struggle with animation that looks too fast or too slow. I'll also show you how to make a specialized slow motion effect to apply the principles we go over in this video. So let's take a look at how timing and spacing work together to change an object's speed. Be sure to leave me a like and let's get started. What is speed? Speed refers to how fast an object is moving. It's the rate at which an object covers distance. Fast objects cover a relatively large distance in a short period of time, and slow objects cover a small distance in a long period of time. Anything that's not moving has no speed. So in order to find an object's speed, we calculate its distance traveled over the time elapsed. Basically, spacing over timing equals speed. Let's see this in action. For example, I have this tennis ball flying through the air. How fast is it going? Well, we can calculate its distance over the time it takes to move. This tennis ball is moving a distance of 8 inches over a period of 16 frames. Inches are spacing, frames are timing. When we do 8 divided by 16, we get that this ball is moving a ½ inch per frame. Let's see an example now of how changing the timing will affect the speed of this motion. So we're going to keep the same distance of 8 inches, but this time, let's see what happens when a ball covers 8 inches in 8 frames. So we end up with 8 inches over 8 frames. Let's see what that looks like. Much faster. And the equation will actually support that because now we've moved up from a ½ inch per frame to 1 inch per frame. So by cutting the timing in half from 16 frames to 8 frames, our object moves faster. What happens if we now, instead of changing the timing of this motion, what if we change the spacing? So we're going to keep the same timing as the first one, 16 frames total to cover for the ball to fly through the air. And then this time we're going to make the ball travel only 4 inches instead of 8 inches. So 4 inches over a period of 16 frames. Let's see what that looks like. So it's only covering half the distance in the same amount of time, and we see that the object is moving a lot slower. And the equation supports that. 4 inches over 16 frames gets us a 1/4 inch per frame. That's a lot slower. So as you can see, both the timing and the spacing of an animation affect the speed of an object's movement. It's not one or the other. Both of them affect your subject's speed. So how do we speed up or slow down an animation? Here's a rule you can remember. To slow down a movement, you can increase the timing or decrease the spacing. Basically, you make the action take longer to happen or make the action cover less distance. Now, to speed up a movement, you can decrease the timing or you can increase the spacing. Basically, you make the action take less time to happen or you make the action cover more distance. So I want to leave this video off with a demonstration of how I would go about animating a dramatic slow motion effect by hand. Because in principle, it's very simple to do once you understand what speed is and how we determine speed as animators. So I'm going to grab my pen now. So the first step would be to make your core drawings, your keys, extremes, and breakdowns. I have this character hitting a tennis ball. I've drawn in my keys, extremes, and breakdowns, my core drawings. If you don't know about core drawings, check out my video on character animation. So we have him start the swing. There's a little anticipation before that. And as you can see, I actually have mapped out the 2 extremes I want the slow motion to happen in between. It's gonna be between 5 and 6 is where I want this slow motion effect to happen. We're just going to cover a small amount of distance because I want to achieve that slow motion effect. Summary of step 1, make your core drawings and then identify where you want the slow motion effect to happen. Okay, next you're going to space out your drawings on the timeline until they look natural. I know that I'm going to be animating this on 2s, so I'm just keeping in mind with my spacing up here where my drawings are landing on. When this is all done in between, each drawing is going to be exposed for 2 frames. If you're not familiar with the process of in-betweening, check out my video on timing and spacing. We got it all covered here, folks. So specifically with this slow motion portion, remember, slow objects cover a small distance in a long period of time. So we already got the small distance covered, but let's maybe stretch out this timing a little more so we can dramatize the slow motion effect. And let's see how that looks when we play it. All right, so it's almost like it pauses. And so we know that the slow motion effect is going to take place between those 2 extremes. So anytime you want to make a slow motion effect or you want something to go slow, it's going to have a long timing and short spacing. We're taking 12 whole frames, maybe 6 drawings, to cover, what, maybe half a centimeter of distance traveled. That's how we're gonna achieve our super slow motion effect. Okay, so you make your core drawings and you decide where you want to put your slow motion portion. Step 2, we spaced out our frames on the timeline according to what looked best, and we gave our slow motion movement a duration. That's gonna be a duration of, it's gonna be 13 frames, including the one that we're drawing on. 13 frames just to move this little distance. That's gonna give us a nice slow motion effect. So let's go ahead and write a timing chart for this animation. 11 to 23, that's our slow motion portion. 11 is a keyframe, all the way down to 23, which is an extreme. To emphasize this slow motion effect even more, I'm gonna have it slow down into 23, just using halves, and 21 is in there too. So it's gonna slow down into 23. That will really enhance the slow motion effect because towards 15 through 21, it's gonna be barely moving at all. We're gonna be covering very, very little space, and I think that'll enhance what we're going for. We'll have it happen in halves, roughly, you know. Might change depending on what looks good. Let's in between. All right, that's enough for the first pass. So just a few things I want to point out so we can conclude. First thing, you really don't have to overthink slow motion. It really is just that. It's slow motion. It's just super slow. Taking a long time to do something little is what the definition of slow is. Don't overthink it when you're making your own slow motion effects in your animation. When this ball hits here, you get to see the real squash and stretch. And you know, this is a tennis ball. So when I animated this straight ahead, it doesn't follow the chart. But I was thinking of when you see those slow motion videos on YouTube or anywhere else, objects that are usually pretty rigid, right? Like tennis balls and even like golf balls. When you see them in slow motion, you see that they too have squash and stretch. So I definitely wanted to include that in this animation demonstration. Guys, definitely try this for yourselves. Use consistent timing, meaning like, you know, we animated this all on 2s. We didn't add any 1s, or we didn't change around the timing to make it more dynamic. Try using consistent timing to animate something slow motion, and you'll see that it really is quite simple when you keep in mind that speed is just spacing over timing. Timing charts are the literary form of motion. They're used to plan the chronological and spatial relationships of your drawings before entering the in-between phase. Let's take a closer look at how they work. Be sure to leave me a like, and let's get started. So usually I plot my timing charts between 2 keys, 2 extremes, or a key and an extreme. Basically, you're just traveling from one core drawing to the next, planning out all the spatial relationships of your drawings before in-betweening. In this video, we're going to be using all the animation knowledge we've learned in this course to decipher timing charts and learn to read them. So here we have a diagram of the anatomy of a timing chart. So let's start with the timing of our drawings. Basically, this is just a legend detailing how we're going to label each type of drawing on a timing chart. This F with the hashtag next to it means our frame number. So if our frame number is circled, it's going to be a key. If it has a little pow effect around it, it's going to be an extreme. And if it's underlined twice, it's going to be a breakdown. And finally, if the frame number on the chart is alone with no indicators around it, no symbols around it, then it's going to be an in-between. So keys, extremes, and breakdowns are our core drawings. That's what we look for first when we read a timing chart. Moving on, we're going to learn how we label our spatial relationships on a timing chart. So if we go for half spacing or even spacing, we make 2 arcs that are equal, somewhat equal in size. So we can see 1 is probably a keyframe, 5 is probably a keyframe, and 3 is right in the middle between 1 and 5. So we just make 2 equal sized arcs to show that. If you guys don't know what half spacing, thirds, and favors are, check out my video on timing and spacing. Next up, we have spacing on thirds in the middle here. So there's 2 ways we could do this, 1 and 5 being our keyframes. In the first example here, 3 is closer to 1 than it is to 5. It's 1/3 away from frame 1, but 2/3 away from frame 5. This chart is just telling us that frame 3 is going to be spaced on thirds. We know that because we have 3 arcs, and it's going to be closer to 1 than it is to 5. Now we have the opposite example where we have 2 arcs from 1 to 3 and then 1 arc from 3 to 5. That just means that 3 is going to be closer to 5 than it is to 1. So anytime you see 3 arcs like so, we're talking about spacing on thirds. And lastly, we have favors spacing, FV. Sometimes animators will mark in favors like so, where they'll make one small jump and then one huge jump like that to show that 3 is heavily favoring 1 over 5, but others will just leave it like this, where you can just see on the chart that 3 lands much closer to 1, or in this example right here, that it lands much closer to 5. There's many ways that animators label keys, extremes, and breakdowns, evens, thirds, and favors. This is just one way that you can label them. You can probably come up with your own labelings for your timing charts. The one thing you want to make sure though is that you have labelings for keys, extremes, breakdowns, and in-betweens, and then also halves, thirds, and favors. So we have our timing labels and our spacing labels. To practice this, let's break down this timing chart. Okay, so on this chart, all the drawings are labeled by the frame number that they fall on. So to start deciphering what this timing chart is telling us, we look for our core drawings. So we know 1 is circled, that must be a keyframe. 13 is circled, that's also a keyframe. And 7 has 2 underlines. That is a breakdown. Now what's the relationship between 1, 7, and 13? Well, we look at these 2 large arcs we see here, and that looks identical to what we have over here in even spacing. So that means 7 is going to be spaced equally between 1 and 13. It's going to fall right in the middle. All right, now that we know what the relationships between our core drawings are, we can move on to the in-betweens. So 3, 5, 9, and 11 are in-betweens. Now what's the spatial relationship between them? Let's start on the top side from 1 to 7. We have this second even arc that's going from 1 to 5 to 7. So that tells us that 5 is going to fall right in the middle between 1 and 7. And then we have the same thing for 3. So between 1 and 5, 3 is going to fall right in the middle. Okay, so let's go on the other side from 7 to 13. 7 is a breakdown, 13 is a keyframe. So we have this arc going from 7 to 9 and then to 13. That tells us that 9 is going to be right in the middle of 7 and 13. You have another equal arc from 9 to 11 to 13. So that tells us 11 is going to be right in the center between 9 and 13. So overall, the spacing looks like this object is going to speed up and then slow down. We can just call that an ease in and ease out. If you don't know about ease in, ease out, speed up and slow down, check out my video on the 4 types of movement. And also all these arcs that we identified tell us that the spacing is even across the entire animation. We're not using any thirds or any favors. So the resulting animation from this timing chart can possibly look like this. So that's so we have frame 1, we have frame 7, which is right in the center between 1 and 13, and we have 13 on the other side. And each of them is spaced evenly. Notice how 5 is right in between 1 and 7. And then 3 is also right in the middle of 1 and 5. Everything is spaced evenly. Now the reason I said that our animation can end up looking like this is because timing charts don't specify direction or speed. They only show us the relationship of our drawings relative to one another. That said, our animation could also end up looking like this. This cube on the bottom. The reason is because we still have keyframes on 1 and on 13. 7 is still a breakdown in the middle, and we still end up with an ease in, ease out with even spacing. So guys, that is basically how you read and decipher a timing chart. Check out my Patreon page. This cheat sheet will be available for free over on patreon.com/noblefrugalstudio. Okay, you know I usually don't like to leave you guys without a demonstration of what we're learning. So let's practice reading timing charts with this example here. So say an animator gives you this chart with these drawings to in between. Let's decipher what this chart is telling us to do, and then I'll give you guys one that you can try for your own practice. When reading a timing chart, what do we do first? Well, first, as always, we identify the core drawings and their spatial relationship. So 1 and 13 are keyframes and 7 is a breakdown. Now what's the spatial relationship? Well, this outermost arc right here that we see is telling us that 7 is closer to 13 than it is to 1. See, we have 2 jumps from 1 and 1 jump to 13. Assuming that all those arcs are equal, that's telling us that 7 is 2/3 away from 1 and only 1/3 away from 13. Basically, 7 is a third favoring 13. And the drawings that the animator provided us reflect that. You can definitely see if I turn on this onion skin that 7 is favoring 13 via thirds. Okay, so we established our core drawings and we understand their spatial relationship. Let's move on to the in-betweens. So 3, 5, 9, and 11 are in-betweens. We'll start again at the top from 1 to 7. So we have 5. It looks like 5 is another third as we see these 3 jumps again. And it's a third favoring 1 this time because we have 1 jump from 1 and then 2 jumps to 7. So it's a third favoring 1. And then 3 doesn't have any jumps. 3 looks like it's just favoring 1. Okay, so how about on the side from 7 to 13? From 7, we have this arc going from 7 to 9 and then from 9 to 13, but both of the jumps are equal. So that means 9 is going to fall in the middle of 7 and 13. That's even spacing. And then how about 11? Well, 11 has no jumps, no markings. And it looks like if we were to draw one, it would go like this and then there. So that seems like a favor to me. It seems like 11 is going to heavily favor 13. Okay, so we identified our core drawings and their spatial relationships, and we identified our in-betweens and their spatial relationships. Now, before we start drawing, we have to identify our drawing order. which order do we draw our in-betweens in? We already have 1, 7, and 13 drawn for us by the animator. So starting with this section from 1 to 7, which in-between do we draw first? To find the answer, we can imagine this sequence if we didn't have 7 drawn for us. So imagine we don't have frame 7. Let's actually just delete that for a moment. So without 7, can we draw 5, 3, or even 9 or 11? Well, no, because we know that 5 is 1/3 away from 1 and 2/3 from 7, but without drawing 7, we have no idea how close to put 5 to 1 or 5 to 7 because 7 doesn't even exist. So in the same way, we're gonna draw 5 first. After drawing 5, we'll know how close 3 is favoring 1. So we'll draw 5 first and then we'll draw 3. Then on the other side, which one do we draw first? Well, in the same way, we won't know how close 11 is to 13 unless we draw 9 first, which is right in the middle of 7 and 13. So let's draw 9 third and then 11. Okay, let's get in betweening. Set up my onion skin to show 1 and 7 to draw 5. Just by where the frame numbers are landing, you can already tell that we're animating on 2s. Since 1 plus 2 equals 3, 3 plus 2 equals 5, 5, 7, and so on. Each drawing is going to be exposed for 2 frames. It's gonna be somewhere around here. Okay, now that we have 5, update my onion skin, we can see that favoring 1 compared to 5 would mean we put it really close like here. If we hadn't drawn 5 first, a favor could be, over here. It could even be this far out depending on the drawing that comes after it. But now that we have 5 to reference, we can see that if we want to really convince the audience that we're favoring, that 3 is favoring 1, you want to put it really, really close, like something like here. All right, now we have frame 9 to draw third, and 9 is right in the middle between 7 and 13. It's even spacing. So we'll make 9. Oops, I forgot to label number 3. There we go. 9 is gonna be right in the middle. Now that we've drawn 9, we know how close to put 11 to 13. 9 is right in the middle, so we can really put 11 real close to 13 to sell it as a favor. And as a result, the following timing chart looks something like this. That is how you read a timing chart. Thank you guys so much for watching. The only thing I want to leave you guys off with, if you'd like to, is you can try deciphering this timing chart right here. You can just use a circle or a square to keep it really, really simple. This is more about understanding timing charts. The drawing stuff can come later. So we have your core drawings 1, 9, and 15. If you guys want a little homework assignment, you can try following this chart to in between this circle. What are the fundamentals of animation? The 12 principles of animation outline techniques, concepts, and one fundamental to the novice animator so they can achieve believable motion in their work. The problem is that this list doesn't outline what something needs in order to be animation. Seeing that many animations don't use a number of these principles, it can be hard to justify which principle is really more important than the others, and to decide what you should learn first. What can you do? That's where the fundamentals come in. Hey guys, it's Sebastian here from the Noble Frugal Studio. In this video, I'm going to introduce you to the true fundamentals of animation. These core principles apply regardless of your style. They will always be relevant. Be sure to leave me a like, and let's get started. I define the fundamentals of animation as the basic truths that make animation possible. There are 3, technically 4, fundamental concepts that make animation work. They are timing and spacing, mechanics, and story. Every single movement you see is a combination of these 3 principles. Time and space create the potential for motion. Motion occurs due to the laws of mechanics. And finally, our brain interprets a sequence of motion to determine what happened. That's the story. Let's get to know more about each fundamental so you can have a sturdy foundation to house your extensive animation knowledge. Timing and spacing. Timing is when you see something, and spacing is where you see it. The collaboration of time and space creates the potential for motion. In my opinion, animators should learn this first because we're going to learn about mechanics and storytelling through the lens of timing and spacing. When time and space are considered together, we get the concept of speed, spacing over timing, which we talked about in a previous video. And a familiar timing and spacing technique is straight ahead and pose to pose. These two workflows aren't fundamental in themselves, they're just methods you can use to achieve your goals when animating. Organizing your animation knowledge becomes simple once you understand this first fundamental. We can categorize each new concept we learn about based on whether it fits under timing, spacing, or timing and spacing. Let's try it with the next fundamental, mechanics. Just because objects have the potential to move doesn't mean they will. Mechanics is the study of why and how objects move in the real world. This is the next step in the animator's journey because we use the laws of motion we observe to communicate our message, our story to the audience. Mechanical timing is the interval that change occurs. When making a motion profile, we record when an action starts and stops, which is the period of most change. We also mark when it switches its type of motion. We learned about types of motion in this video here. Mechanical spacing can be referred to as displacement. We observe how far an object travels in each direction and what types of motion it employs during its trip. Finally, we observe how the mechanical timing and spacing of the object relate to one another. For example, we may take notes on the object's velocity and the path that it follows. This method of categorization helps to eliminate confusion when learning new concepts. For example, we'll take 3 related animation concepts: follow-through, overlapping action, and drag. Follow-through describes how objects continue to move after the main body has stopped. Movement requires timing and spacing, so we'll put it in the timing and spacing category. Overlapping action describes the offset in timing of the main body and its appendages. And drag describes an offset in position of the appendages of the main body. So in reality, these are all the same concept, but viewed in the lens of timing, spacing, and then timing and spacing. That was easy. Now that we have our mechanical tools primed, let's use them to build our story. Storytelling is the primary job of an animator. A story can be as simple as the ball moved left to as complicated as a pig leaps from below a steel cloche and escapes into the hallway. The timing of a story is called the sequence. It's the order in which events of a story happen. The spacing in a story is called posing. Poses contain location and orientation data essential for the brain's interpretation of a story. And finally, the timing and spacing of a story is staging. Staging is the art of posing subjects in a sequence. It encompasses both time and space. Put simply, when someone does something and where they do it drastically changes the story. Some familiar story concepts and techniques include, from top to bottom, squash and stretch, solid drawing, appeal, secondary action, and anticipation. These concepts and techniques may be based on real-world mechanics, but their primary function suits to tell a story, not just represent realistic movement. Now that we understand how to categorize animation principles according to their root fundamental, how do we use this knowledge to help us animate? Simple. Say you learn about a new animation concept. For example, we'll use the odd rule. I'm using Clip Studio Paint now to animate this demonstration. In order for you to know how important the odd rule is in relation to the rest of your knowledge, you'll have to place it in a category. The odd rule states that objects that fall due to gravity will do so with a spacing ratio of odd numbers. So how important is the odd rule? Should we add it as a principle of animation? Make it 13? Let's categorize it and find out. First, is the odd rule timing and spacing, mechanics, or storytelling? I'd say it's definitely mechanics, because it's describing how objects behave in the real world. Okay, so is this a concept of mechanical timing, spacing, or both? The odd rule can be employed regardless of the timing, as long as the DPS is consistent. So I'd say the odd rule primarily describes mechanical spacing. Finally, is this an animation technique, or is it an animation concept? Definitely a concept, because it occurs outside of animation. This way, I know the odd rule is not fundamental, it's not technical, and it's not primarily about timing. It's a concept of mechanical spacing. That's great and all, but is all of this organization really necessary? While it may seem excessive at first, trust me, when you get familiar with dozens of animation concepts, it's super helpful to know exactly when to use them and how they relate to one another. This way, you can keep track of your growing knowledge so you can become a better animator faster. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful. If you're enjoying this free 2D animation course, be sure to leave me a like and consider subscribing for more free animation tutorials. Not all objects move at the same time. Even within one physical body, different parts start and stop moving at their own individual pace. This is called follow-through. It's a concept of mechanical timing and spacing. If you don't understand what I mean by that, check out this video here. Using this concept will help us achieve a natural look to our animations. So let's talk about the timing and spacing of follow-through. Hey guys, Sebastian here from the Noble Frugal Studio. We can understand follow-through better by learning about the chain principle. Viewing the objects we animate like several links of the same chain will help us better grasp the order in which things start and stop moving. It's a game of follow the leader. So do this with me. We're going to animate a chain starting with just the first link. So I'm using Opentoonz today because timing and spacing your drawings is super easy in this program. Plus, it's completely free. So for our first link, we're going to have an object speed up and slow down with anticipation and overshoot. We'll use 17 frames and we'll animate on 2s. So if you don't know how to do this yet, watch the first 2 videos in my free 2D animation course. We'll use a circle to symbolize the links of our chain. That way the rotation of this object and its tilt are ambiguous. It'll help keep the drawing simple. So as always, we'll start by setting our keyframes here and here. I'll extend the end to 24, and we'll make our breakdown on 9. First anticipation I'll set at frame 5. Overshoot will be on 13. Alright, those are the core drawings done, so let's do the in-betweens. Alright, that looks fine. So now for we'll name this link number 1. And for our second link, let's just copy this animation and then we're gonna offset the timing. Let's see how we do that. So we're gonna take this entire column in Opentoonz, right click, copy columns, right click again onto this column, and then paste insert above. Now let's grab this animate tool. We're gonna hold shift and then drag this second link down. So it's just a little bit underneath the first link. So it should look like this. And next we're gonna take the timing of link number 2 and we're gonna offset it. So I'm gonna click here, click and drag this tab and drag to the right. Just 2 frames. Drawing number 2 is here for our first link, but drawing number 2 is 2 frames after that for our second link. That delayed timing is called overlapping action. It starts later and it's also going to overlap or end later. So it looks like this. Just extend this end so they both end at the same time. Alright, so the offset and timing is called the overlapping action, and the offset and spacing we see between these 2 animations is called drag. See, the second chain is dragging behind the first one. So we're going to do this again for our third and fourth links. Right click, paste insert above, rename this link 3, animate tool, shift. Then we're going to push our this drawing number 2, we're gonna push all the way. So we're gonna go 1, 2, then 3, 4. Make sure these all meet up at the ends. I just click and drag to select these frames to change their exposure. Now we should look like this. One more time for link number 4. Delay this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then make sure these match up. Okay, with all 4 links done, we get a pretty interesting result. It's easy now to calculate when each link starts and stops moving because we know exactly how much overlapping action each one has. Our second link is delayed by 2 frames or 1 drawing. Our third link delayed by 4, and our fourth link delayed by 6. Knowing how long each part of the object you're animating will move is very useful, and that's the benefit of the chain principle. Okay, now for the icing on the cake, let's make a new layer, new Toonz raster level. Don't forget to hit save. And what I want you to do, follow along with me, is to animate a string connecting all of these links. So I'm going to extend this all the way to the end, and we'll go through, make a new frame each time we get a movement. Make sure you maintain the length of the string. Be careful not to make it any longer or any shorter. All right, notice what happens when we hit play. We get a very natural waving motion. Wait, does this mean that the wave principle and follow through are the same thing? Probably. I haven't done the research yet. This natural chain reaction is what we want in order to make our animation look realistic and believable. You can apply this method when animating anything that has moving parts, but in a case like this, it especially works for animating things like capes or drapery. This way you can calculate exactly how long your subject is going to be moving, and you can achieve a natural flow of your subject along with its appendages. Guys, try this experiment at home. Identify which part of your subject is leading. In our case, it's this first chain link right here. After you identify what's leading, copy that motion and offset the timing to see what happens. Now, it won't always work exactly this way, so in a future video about follow through, we'll talk more in depth about how we can use this in a real world animation.